can you see my screen?
Yes, I can. I'm sorry. I forgot I turned off my
Okay.
mic. Yes.
That's okay. You can whatever you're comfortable with, your mic
Yeah.
or in the chat,
Okay.
whatever's good for you is fine. Um, okay, do you have any questions about anything we've done so far?
I do not.
Okay, good. Either I've done my job or I thoroughly confused you.
Maybe a little of both. But
That's often the case.
no, it'll be good. And I'm glad I have those videos to refer back on, so it's good.
Yeah. Okay. Today we are doing survey flow, um, which is actually quite a useful tool in Qualtrics, and because there's a bunch of things that you can do as well, especially in terms of I guess directing your respondents to doing different things and making different things possible rather than just, this straight questionnaire type thing. So I have a few questions already made up just for the interest of time here. There's the typical stuff, a consent, asking BMI, and uh, other things, nothing really special here. To do survey flow, you come over to the left here to this icon and click on that, and you get this. Excuse me. And now you can see where blocks in Qualtrics uh, are useful and where they really become important, actually. Um, so it shows all the question blocks that we have. You can do toggle questions and you'll see the questions. You can't see the answers, but usually once you're in survey flow, this is enough to know what things are going on. And you can also see why I always recommend um, labeling your blocks up here,
Mhm.
rather than the default block one, block two, block three, because as you move blocks around, they don't get renumbered. And especially when you're in survey flow, it's a lot easier with a label to know what it's doing. You can come over here to the right and you can make it smaller. Sometimes if you have a really long survey, there's a lot of these in here. Um, but we'll make them big so you can see it.
Thank you.
Um, Collapse all won't do much right now. Once we put more things in here, that will make more sense. And this show flow IDs. This is another one of those things that will make more sense in a couple of weeks when we look at the data. But if you toggle that, you can see now up in these upper right corners, it has these numbers, these little labels. And especially if you're doing randomization in the survey flow, which I'm going to show you in a little while, you need to run the test responses, and this is a way that you can check and make sure that your randomization is working properly when you download your data, because Qualtrics will tell you which block was seen by whom. And so you need that ID for that.
Gotcha.
In the survey flow, when you're working in here, it's really not useful. Doesn't really tell you anything. So we're going to turn it off so it's not all cluttered up. In each of the blocks, you see there's add below, move, duplicate, and delete. Duplicate is exactly what it means. So you just made a second block of the consent block. Delete is exactly that. It will delete it. You can move the blocks around. This is good if, especially when you're looking at your survey and you want to change sections around. It's a lot easier to do it here. You just click on that and then you can drag it to wherever you want it. Put this back because that's important to what we're doing. And add below. This is where you start getting into. You can add another block. Branch is doing like an if then. I'm going to show this, and this is one of the best parts of survey flow. Embedded data, we're going to look at as well. That is kind of an offshoot of the piped text that we saw. It's a way of creating data without necessarily having to ask the respondents a question. Randomizer, we'll take a quick look at as well. That's just for randomizing the blocks. We've looked at some randomization of questions and responses. Web service, I haven't seen many people use this, but doesn't mean that it's not useful. That's a way of bringing information from another website into your survey. So maybe you want, that day's stock prices or weather or something along those lines. If that other site allows you to pull that information, this is how you would do that. Text sentiment, this is doing their text analysis, which is really pretty rudimentary. There we go. There's a lot of setup that you have to do in the text. I've never seen anybody use this. Supplemental data you don't actually have access to. That is like an administrative kind of thing. So people in IT might have access to that, but they can't turn the button on and off for individual people.
Okay.
Group, we'll see what group does. It's a way of grouping blocks together to do something as a whole to all of them. I'll show you that later on. It's pretty useful with the randomizer. The authenticator is if you want to authenticate people, make sure that they're only the people that you want to are answering your survey. And that can work off of either a contact list that you've created. That's something we'll see next week. Or you can use single sign-on. One thing with the single sign-on is that you can also pull information from that system about that respondent. So you put in, they put in their net ID and their password, whatever information is in our system within that, like, it's usually their class, what school they're in, and a few other things. You can pull all that into this survey automatically. I have a whole handout on my research guide about doing this. So I'm not going to go into it here. End of survey can be very useful. It's a way of, I'll talk more about this, of doing different things at the end of the survey other than just saying, thanks for filling out the survey. We're going to go into this a little bit more. And finally, reference survey. That's useful if you have a lot of surveys and let's say you want to ask demographic information in all of them, the same demographic information. You can create a survey that has all of those demographic questions. You insert it from your survey library here, and then on the fly, Qualtrics will pull that in and present it to your respondent. The advantage of doing it that way is if you need to make a change to, one of your questions, you want to add some categories or take some out, you only have to change it in that reference survey. You don't have to go to each and every other survey that uses it and make those changes. So this is really, it's very useful if you have a lot of surveys that use the same thing. But if you don't, then it's not something you would use very much. So let's go back and take a look at the survey. Oh, save your changes. I did a lot of stuff. It doesn't look like I changed anything, but I put things in and took them out. So as I said, this is, a standard kind of thing. You have your consent, my typical example of BMI. And then I have two questions. One question will be if the person's BMI is over a certain amount or value, and the other is if it's under a certain value. Now, usually if you were doing this in survey flow, there would be a lot of questions or maybe even several blocks that you're sending these different groups of people to. Well, let's go back. And here's our consent block, and we're going to add below. And we'll do a branch. So it will not be triggered until you add a condition. And we've seen these kinds of things before. Question, embedded data, which we haven't created any yet. What type of device the respondent is working on. If you have any quotas set up, geo-IP location, that's their location based on their IP address, which may not be where they actually are, especially if they're using any kind of VPN. Not to mention it's, like your IP address right now will say Syracuse, not even Syracuse University, but like the city of Syracuse. That may or may not be good enough, but if you really need to know where somebody is at it when they respond or, what state or city they live in, you really should specifically ask for that. And then true, false, that I don't see people using that too much. It's just if you want to do a true false type of test. Most of the time, this is going to be based on a question or embedded data. We'll see the embedded data in a moment. So select the question, the first one. Yes, no. So we're going to say no, because what we want to do at this point You can say, okay, you can add more conditions. And we've seen this before. You can do and or. I'm going to add an element here. And now we're going to do end of survey. And click on customize. It says these options will override any survey options, everything everywhere else. And of course, you have to like turn it on. They really want you to they really want to make sure that you know that this is going to ignore anything else you've done. So you can have the default end of survey message. If you don't have, this will just kick people out if they say no and get the default saying, gee, thanks. You can have a custom end of survey message, and this might be useful if you have different reasons for people not finishing the survey. Like here, I just have the one question: do you consent to filling this out? If the person says no, you can kick them out. You might also ask, are they 18 or over? And if they're not 18 or older, you might want to have a different message for kicking them out. And that's where you can set that up. You can also redirect them to a different URL. And that's what happens in that sign-in survey. When you put in your information and click submit, it goes to a customized end of survey and redirects you to the Zoom URL. And send them an additional thank you email from your library. You might not want to increment the quota if you're kicking them out because they don't consent. You don't necessarily want to increment your quota. So you click that. Show response summary is your respondent will see a summary of all the responses once they click submit to the whole survey. Do not record any personal information and remove panel association. In Qualtrics, you'll see something called a panel, a contact list, and a directory. They are all the same thing. When I first started using Qualtrics, it was always called a panel. Then they started calling them contact lists. And most recently, they call them now directories. But it's all the same thing. Depending on what kind of survey you're doing and why you might be having them, finish the survey, kicking them out of the survey, you might not want to record any personal information. If it's a very sensitive survey and you don't need that information or can't or don't want to collect that information, it says not recommended because you can always delete that information later on. So it's very rare that you might want to use that. You can flag a response screened out. They didn't consent. You have if you have quotas and the quota's already been met. And this will, as it says, embedded data field Q terminate flag will be set to screened. Will be set to complete. Depending on, why the person is being sent to the end of the survey. And it says, do not record survey response. Um, I can't think of any reason really why you would not want to do this, or why you would not want to record the response unless it is an immensely sensitive topic. Um, as I say, you can always go ahead at the end after everything's been collected in your data and delete it from there. Um, but there might be a rare instance where you don't want it recorded in the first place. Um, as I say, it would be rare. Are there any questions? Okay, click save. Now, here's where we get to some interesting things. In the BMI, we ask how tall are you and how much do you weigh? Well, that's real nice. And that those both of those get recorded in your data, and you can certainly download your data and actually calculate their BMI, in Excel, SPSS, or whatever else you might be using. But you might need to know that in the course of your survey because you have some questions for people who are over a BMI and different questions for somebody who is under a certain BMI. This is where embedded data comes in handy. It says create new field or choose from drop down. Now there's all this information that can be automatically collected. Um, Most of the time, sometimes you want the response ID or session ID, depending on what you're doing. Add from contacts is getting information from your contact list. You have to select the contact list and go through all of that. Or existing embedded data. Well, we don't have any existing embedded data yet. So of course it says no items available. You can also just create it. Now it says value will be set from panel or URL. Um, you've seen here, it's like here it says tab equals survey flow. That's one way of doing it. But most of the time you're going to click on set a value now. It says custom value. You can put in just a number if you need or something else. Most of the time you're going to do something like piped text. And we've seen this piped text before. So we're going to do how much do you weigh? I'm going to put a space in because we also need how tall are you? Now, this is you can, with something like this, you need to do some editing so that Qualtrics can do the math operation to calculate the BMI. And so I always recommend doing that in, a separate notepad, Word, something else that you can copy and paste to and from. I have examples how to do it here. Let me put that in the chat. And so, you can just do a simple formula like this. When you're doing pipe text, this is what it come when you click on whichever one you want. This is what it looks like, but you need to change it to this, which is basically taking out that curly brace and the $sign, and then change it here. So I'm going to go back into the survey. Where'd it go? There it is. I'll just go down to the bottom. Copy those in. And even I have to keep looking back. Put that curly brace back in. Take that one out. And you need spaces between all this. Qualtrics is picky about all the spaces. I'm just going back and looking and making sure that I did it correctly, which is really not a guarantee that it is. And now you can copy and paste that back in. So you can see why it's a lot easier now to, do it in Notepad or something else, because this little box is impossible to see. And if you have a more complex equation here, it's really necessary. And you can add several fields, several embedded data elements in this one block here. One thing I want to show you is this options. And this is a way of telling Qualtrics what kind of data you're trying to collect. As you see here, it says text. Well, BMI is not really text. It's a number. So if you wanted to use any of the Qualtrics charts and graphs and things, reports in their own, you would need to change this so that it would treat this properly as a number rather than as, just a string. You can see there's a whole bunch in here. These sets are like for check all that apply. I've never seen any real use for these. The ones you're going to use the most is number, text, and date. And it's really especially important if you're working with dates that you set it to date. Otherwise, it gets really weird. What it means here is that this is just for filtering people out. It's not something you would necessarily want to report on, as it says non-reportable. So if you were doing your charts in Qualtrics, you wouldn't be able to use that particular embedded data field. So we're going to set that to number. And now we can do a branch, add a condition, embedded data. You can just type in BMI is say it's less than 100. Actually, I'm going to do is greater than 30. Now I have to move this element, this block, to underneath this branch. So what happens is person comes in, they answer their two questions. How tall are you? How much do you weigh? Qualtrics will calculate the BMI, and then they'll come through, and if their BMI is greater than or equal to 100, they get sent to this block. Now we need to do another branch. We actually have to move this out. If we had kept it where it was, you can follow these branches, these arrows. If we had kept it here, then it never would, it's was under this branch. So if it's greater than equal to 100, they would answer this. And then if it's less than 100, well, if it's greater than, it can't be less than. So nothing would happen. So now we can move it. Click apply to save all of that. You can come back to the survey builder. As you can see, it doesn't say anything in here about what you've done in the survey flow. Will be nice if there were little notes in here, but there aren't, so we need to live with that. Especially when you're working in survey flow, you might need to click publish so that everything in the survey flow gets saved along with the rest of the survey. Click publish. And now we can do preview. And first, we'll test it. End of survey, I'll say no. And you see it sent you to the end of the survey. Do it again, this time we'll say yes. So now we get the questions for BMI. Let's say money, just to make sure that it's under 100. And you get that question. And then at the end. Now you get a different question. Are there any questions about that so far?
No.
Okay. One other thing, as I showed you that sometimes you might want to do is randomizing your blocks. Rather than going through a whole bunch of this, I'm just going to show you a couple of things that I already have done. There we go. So this is a bit more, you see there's a lot more, few more blocks. We go into survey flow. So now you can see where the group element can come in handy. Is with this, we want to ask a certain set of questions. There's 4 different groups here, and they all get different questions. And we want the respondent to be randomly assigned to one of these groups. And so have with the randomizer randomly present one of the following elements. So your respondent will come in and randomly they'll be sent to either group 1-1 or group 2-1, etc. And then be sent out of the survey. And you might want to present 2. That's okay, or 3. If you did 4, then they would see all of these, but in randomized order for each respondent. 9 times out of 10, you are going to want an even number of people in each of these groups. So you're going to want to click evenly present elements. What's important is this edit count. So what Qualtrics will do is it will count how many people are assigned to each of these groups. And with evenly present, it will try and make these as even numbered as possible. So if you have 100 people, each of these will have 25. If you have 95 people, it'll be a little bit different for a couple of them, but it'll be as evenly as it possibly can be made. If you don't click evenly present elements, then it's going to be random anywhere. You might get group 1-1 with 40 people in it and group 2-2 with 5 people in it. There'll still be 100 total, but it's going to be back and forth. Click save. And click apply here. And come back to the survey, and this is where this generate test responses. This is a very, very useful tool. It just says 5. That's usually not enough to really test anything. There's these additional options. Allow unanswered questions. You might want to test that. Show verbose output. It's just the output that it tells you what it's doing. That's not particularly useful. So click on generate. And what this is doing is it's generating random answers to all of your questions. So that there would be as if you had 100 respondents. And it can take a minute or so. Yeah, there we go. It says remaining and shows it created 100. The verbose output would just tell you what each of the answers were that it assigned. Really, I've never seen any use for that. Or the additional URL parameters. I don't know what that does, to be perfectly honest. I haven't been able to find that. We can close that and we'll come back to the survey flow and click on edit count. You can see that it's 25 all the way through. Now, as you're testing this, you need to come back each time you test it with the random generator. You need to reset all counts. And you especially need to do that before you actually administer your survey, allow people to start answering it. Now, just for fun, I'm going to turn that off so you can see. Finally. I see that edit counts isn't there, but if you click that, and now you can see it's, some of these are kind of close. Then there's one that's kind of out there. And this can be, every time you do this, this will be different if you do not click evenly present elements. So as I say, 9 times out of 10, you're going to definitely want that. You can still reset all counts if you forgot, and it goes back to 0 and you're good. This restore original counts, you might want to start off with a certain number, and this will just restore those. It's like reset sets it all back to 0, restores sets it back to what you put in there yourself. And you can get kind of fancy with the randomization. If you want. Nobody says you have to. But, I'm a nerd, so I get into this stuff. So you see, we have a lot more blocks here. You can go into the survey flow. And you can see where there's randomization within the randomization. So what would happen is your respondent comes in and is assigned to one of these groups. And then once they're in that group, they will randomly see one of these three, or I have it set here, they'll see all 3 blocks, but in a random order for each respondent. Or if I just put in one, they would see random of one of these. And again, you want evenly present elements and go in and reset all the counts each time you generate test responses. Now, one thing is when you do this kind of nested randomization, Qualtrics will evenly present these elements, the groups, and then evenly present these blocks. But it may not necessarily be the exact, I guess, design that you want. And so you would need to download the data and then in here, click flow ID, and then which will download the data, which we'll see in a couple of weeks. It'll make more sense. Qualtrics will tell you how many people saw this element or saw this one, and then which one of these they saw. And then you can, do crosstabs and things to make sure that, if your design is working the way you want it to. Right, this is kind of getting into the weeds, a little advanced for most people, but like I said, I'm a nerd, so I have to show it to you. Okay. Any questions about anything we've done today? All
I
right.
won't have any questions until I start using it, but I had no
Yes.
idea Qualtrics was this advanced. I had no clue.
Oh, this is the tip of the iceberg for the
Oh,
kinds of stuff you can do. And the thing is, even this with this randomization stuff, this is more than most people. I mean, like 8 out of 10 people will never need to do this. But given I am the research data person, um, this is the kind of thing that, professors or doctoral students will do for their dissertation kind of thing. A normal, um, normal surveys don't do this. But I do get questions about it, so that's why I include it. So if you think you might need to do this, I have on my page, I have all kinds of stuff. Here's the authenticating things that we talked about. Then the experimental design does all the all that randomization stuff. So if you think you need to do it, watch the video and then rattle my cage and we'll get together and work on it.
thanks, Paul.